Zariel, are you with us?
Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Let's get right to the point. First of all, 3 short points, starting off with the news that I got from True News last night. I don't know if you guys watch it, but they reported on two happenings. One near the very close to the facility of, I don't want to say the name here actually, because that's pretty, close to home. It seems that a surface-to-air defensive system was fired at an aircraft, and it missed it and went straight into the country, into the south part of the country, close to the Negev desert, and almost very close to the facility. That was the first thing, and the second happening was that a missile factory actually exploded. No new information on that, but thought it might be worth mentioning here if you gentlemen would like to look into that. Second point, Shogun stand down. So we now know that the troops from Russia have been pulled back from the Russian-Ukrainian border. Everyone says, or it was noted, it was a military exercise. My question: if it was a military exercise, why were the ambassadors of the two countries pulled back or drawn back from each country? It makes no sense, and normally this is a clear sign that there is something much deeper happening or involved. So I do not think that this is really a military exercise. I just shake my head when I hear something like that. It makes no sense. Do you concur on this opinion, or do you think it really was a chess game, a stand down, a political or geostrategic stand down?
No, I think it was a dress rehearsal. All the indications were that the Russians were rehearsing a possible counteroffensive in the event of a Ukrainian attack on the Donbass. So it was not a mere exercise. It was an attempt by the Russians to iron out all the various things they needed to do in order to prepare for the possibility of a Ukrainian attack and of the counteroffensive that they would launch. Now, it is important to say that apparently the Russians have left a large amount of heavy weapons in this region. So if the troops have to be sent back, they will find weapons there ready for them, and they can go back and they can go into battle again extremely quickly. And one of the things to always remember about the Russian military is that it is extremely effective in its logistics, and that the Russians are the people who, more than anyone else, seem to know how to move troops very fast in a very, very short time. The speed of this build-up that we've just seen and of the staging of this rehearsal, I can tell you already, would have astonished many people around the world, many military planners around the world. Compare that with the very incremental way in which the Pentagon moves troops around, and you can see the difference. Obviously, the Russians have enormous advantage that they're doing it within their own country. But even then, it's extremely impressive. So I think it was a dress rehearsal. Now, going back to the question of the ambassadors, and you're absolutely right, this is an unprecedented situation. We have never had a situation comparable to this one, where neither Russia nor the United States has ambassadors in each country. I mean, that's never happened since diplomatic relations between Russia and the United States was restored in the early 1930s after the Russian Revolution. Now, that began with, firstly, Biden's extraordinary blunder in calling Putin a killer. So the Russians called back their ambassador, Anatoly Antonov, to Moscow for consultations. And then they decided to put pressure on the US ambassador to leave Russia after the latest round of sanctions, including sanctions on Russian sovereign debt, were imposed by the United States. Now, that did not happen, therefore, in relation to the situation in Ukraine. It was the Russians responding to first Biden's comments and then to the sanctions comments. The negotiations about Ukraine, which are taking place, are happening at a different level, and they're happening in discussions that are taking place between Patrushev, who is the secretary of Russia's Security Council and Putin's top foreign policy advisor, and Jake Sullivan, who is Joe Biden's national security advisor. Patrushev and Sullivan have spoken 3 times on the phone, and we understand that they are effectively now in virtually constant contact with each other. The militaries, the 2 militaries, have also been speaking to each other also. So I hope that's clear. It's I mean, all of these events, you know, the removal of the ambassadors are connected, but that was it's not directly part of the Ukrainian situation. And as for what the Russians were doing, these drills that they carried out at incredibly short notice, by the way, this was clearly a dress rehearsal. It was not intended to be merely an exercise.
However, if I may expand on that point, when you say it was a rehearsal, there are actual videos that have been posted on YouTube as well as other news agencies. The Russians actually did not move that much military equipment as everyone thought. Lots of it was actually inflated. They have aircraft, they have rocket systems, the Scander rocket systems, they have inflatable traps, so to speak, that they put up there. That is probably why they have everyone sees this large military movement. And where did it all come from all of a sudden? So
well, the Russians have a long tradition of this sort of thing. They even have a word for it. They call it maskirovka, apparently. I mean, I'm not an expert on these things, but they always like to, you know, move, put, you know, the appearance of tanks here when they're actually deploying them there. I think this is also part, if I may say so, of carrying out dress rehearsals and all that sort of thing. I think we know roughly how many Russian troops were involved, because the Russians themselves told us, and I don't think they would be deceiving us about this. There seem to have been around 80,000 of them in various parts around Ukraine. Now, what made it for me clear that this was a dress rehearsal is that the Russians deployed large numbers of their warships to the Black Sea and carried out rehearsed, in effect, an amphibious landing on the Crimean coast. In other words, they train their Marines to storm onto the beaches and do all that sort of thing. Now, that, it seems to me, indicates that the Russians, in the event of a Ukrainian offensive, are planning, or perhaps they want us to think they're planning. I mean, I'm not, you know, privy to their secrets, but they may be planning a landing on the Ukrainian coastline, somewhere in Ukraine's rear. They did that in 2008 during the Georgia War, that they actually carried out landings on the Georgian coastline and even seized control of Georgia's major port, Batumi, for a while. So, you know, this is probably what they were doing. But at least that's, I suspect, again, I come back to this. I mean, maybe that's not the plan, but it's the plan they want us to think they have. But, you know, I'm not a military person. I've never worn a uniform in my life. I know quite a lot of people who were soldiers, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm the great master of strategy or operations, or that I am really able to comment in detail about these things. But a dress rehearsal is what it looked like to me. A dress rehearsal is what the Russians wanted us to think it was, and it almost certainly was. But as I said, the Russians also like to play games with the West. They like, as I said, to inflate balloons of tanks and fool people about them. And as I said, these amphibious landings may be suggestive, or perhaps not. Who knows?
We can agree on two things: that Russians are great diplomats and they are excellent chess players. They literally rule when it comes to chess, which makes them great strategists. Brings me to the next point. It's actually bridging over from another topic. Tomorrow, as we're speaking of historical events happening on Sunday, Elb Day, tomorrow is actually the anniversary of the genocide of Armenia. It is said that the protest is supposed to be acknowledging, the United States will be acknowledging this day, which of course is going to be a kick in the soft particles of Tapir, I always call him Tapir, Tayyip, sorry, of President Erdogan, that is going to aggravate him essentially because the Turks are very proud nation. This, I believe, it's my honest opinion that I believe this will push Turkey away, maybe even out of the NATO, which gives the Russians an opportunity to, of course, intensify. And we know that Erdogan and Putin are not the best of friends, but it will give them the opportunity to intensify their relationship, as Turkey will not want to stand alone. If they were to leave the NATO partnership, however, that would give Russia the ideal opportunity to connect with Turkey. The Bosphorus would then be under their protectorate, and then they would have the Black Sea completely under their control.
Yes, I don't think it's going to happen, partly for the reason that you said. If Turkey left NATO and aligned with Russia and China, I wouldn't just change the balance of power in the Black Sea. It would change the entire balance of power in the Eastern Mediterranean. But precisely for that reason, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the United States will pull out all the stops to prevent it. And I don't think that Erdogan wants it. I think from Erdogan's point of view, yes, he's going to be very angry about what the US is going to do. I think a lot of people in Turkey are going to be very angry about what the US is going to do. But I think he sees NATO membership, Turkey's NATO membership, as giving Turkey enormous leverage in dealing with countries like Russia and China, especially Russia. And I don't think he's going to give that away anytime soon. So I don't think he's going to do that. And remember that Erdogan at the same time has been forging ahead with this ever closer relationship that he's developed with the Ukrainians, which is going to annoy which annoys the Russians a great deal. So, he's a master of playing these particular games, and I don't think a bit of what he will see as trolling from the Americans is going to distract him. That's my view, anyway.
Okay. Probably I forgot to mention this, but what would make it a consideration is that the F-35 program, the Turkish were actually kicked out of it yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
It irritates them.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It infuriates him. At the same time, as I said, I mean, he is a passionate man, an emotional man. He sometimes acts angrily, but at the end of the day, there's always calculation and always an element of calculation and political theatre in what Erdogan does. I think the other reason he will not want to take Turkey out of NATO is that, of course, if he does, that will annoy a lot of people in the Turkish military, who are still very committed to NATO, and many people in the Turkish establishment. And I don't think Erdogan is sufficiently secure anyway to really want to take that risk. But I don't think it's what he wants to do, in truth. I think he wants to use NATO as a leverage for Turkey. He feels it gives Turkey important regional advantages in the Middle East against Russia, in the standoff with Cyprus and Greece. He can always that way say to the Americans, well, at the end of the day, you must side with me. I am your NATO ally. You need me, and therefore, you should give me all the backing that I want. And of course, if you don't, you will lose me. But if he leaves NATO, he loses that leverage, which is why I don't think he's going to do it. I agree, though, that if Turkey were to leave NATO, it would be a tremendous game changer. But precisely for that reason, I don't think it's going to happen.
I hope Biden recognizes the genocide. I really do. But I'm cautious because You know,
As far as
Sleepy Joe.
Supposed to be it's supposed to be under the lid, so
Yeah, we'll see. Let's see. I mean, I always say proceed with caution. A lot of the channels here in Cyprus and in Greece are really pumping it up, but Joe might disappoint. But I mean, I would like to see it. I've got 3 Armenian paintings right behind me, by the way.
Yeah.
On that note, what Alexander says, also keep in mind that if Erdogan did pull out of NATO, I'm sure the U.S. would crash the Turkish economy.
Absolutely.
Like overnight. Like, I mean, crash it, disintegrate it.
Yes.
Probably even go further. Who knows? We never know, because they have Incirlik right there, and moving the essential parts out of that area is also a big issue. Gentlemen, as always, great news from you. Thank you very much for your work, and I wish you all a great weekend.
Thank you very much, Dario. Thank you very much. Take care.